Today, let's take a look at the new congressional map we've got in Tennessee, where Republicans are going to make it a clean sweep. Now, of course, this is still going to be subject to some court challenges, but we'll take a look at the old map, the new map, and how balanced a fair map might look. So let's get into it. Here we are in New York Times. Tennessee approves new map aimed at flipping the last Democratic seat. Now, this is the latest chapter in the ongoing gerrymandering battle, but now that the Supreme Court has allowed for these more partisan gerrymanders as opposed to explicit racial, Republicans here are looking to completely shut out the Dems. Now, it is a pretty red state, but eliminating the last blue district around Memphis. You've probably heard about all the protests, but I seem to hear it framed in two different ways. The Dems are focusing on the racial aspect, how it's a majority black district that they're getting rid of. The better argument, I think, is focusing on the partisan side. That's something both sides can get behind across almost every state, and it would certainly apply to this district right here. So those are the two main takes. Either you're on the racial side or you're on the partisan side, because I don't really think anybody thinks this is actually a fair map at all. So we'll look more at it in a minute, but let's take a look at the map that was used in the last election. So we've got 9 districts in this state. 8 of them were controlled by Republicans, 1 of them by the Dems, and that one is covering Memphis here, but Memphis doesn't have enough population for its own district, so you're going to get a little bit outside of the city. Now you've got some other major cities here. You've got Nashville as well. That population has been split up in the last redistricting round after 2020. Before that, Dems had another district here. The rest of the state is going to be super red, and that's going to include other medium-sized cities of Chattanooga and Knoxville. Just not enough population in those cities. The rural red vote here is very, very red. So here's what we've got for the new map. And you can see here in the southwest around Memphis, the bulk of that vote has been split up into 3 districts. So that's a pretty obvious crack to dilute that blue vote. That's by far the biggest change on this map, but some of the other districts have been tweaked as well. You can see a close up here of the Nashville area. We'll look a little bit more in depth at this map, but let's see what the overall statewide partisan vote might look like. Here's the 24 election. It's the highest turnout. Trump got 64.2%, Harris at 34.5%. And you can see almost every one of these counties is red, and most of them are pretty dark red. But of course, we've got a couple of those counties. We've got Davidson and Shelby. Those are blue. And if you look at how the congressional districts performed in that election, 8 of 9 of them held up and voted for Trump. One of them, though, a little bit lighter shade of red here. That means if it was a big blue wave, this district might not completely be out of reach for the Dems. So it's almost a 2-to-1 vote here in favor of the GOP. For more reference, let's go back to 2020. This was a little bit closer here. Trump over 60%, Biden under 38%. And this was back on the old map, and you could see the Dems had 2 of these districts, the one in Memphis and the one in Nashville. Now we could go further. Let's look at just the U.S. House vote in the 24 election. This is similar to what happened in president. Republicans over 64, the Dems over 33. And this did have candidates running in all 9 districts. So if you go back a little bit further to the last blue wave of 2018, here it was a little bit more narrow. Republicans only over 59%, Dems at 39%. So just based on the statewide partisan lead, if there's 9 districts, if Dems are getting about a third of that vote, theoretically they should get about 3 of the districts. Now the polarization of the vote here is not necessarily favorable for the Dems, but you could easily at least pack enough blue voters into 2 districts. That'd be the Memphis and the Nashville. Going beyond that might be a little bit of a stretch, but a 7-to-2 map would not be heavily imbalanced. The 8-to-1 map was already pretty imbalanced. Going 9-to-0 is something else. That is a complete wipeout. It's similar to what we've got in Massachusetts, 9-0 in favor of the Dems. Now there are more Democrats in Tennessee, and it's certainly easier to draw a district for the Dems than it is for the Republicans to get one in Massachusetts. But overall, obviously 9-0 going to be extremely unfair. I think a 7-to-2 map is something the Dems could live with. So if we take a look at these 9 districts, here we've got the Cook PVI. And you can see most of these are pretty overwhelming for the Republicans. R plus 29, plus 18, just plus 8 in the 5th. That's the one Dems could have an outside shot at. But then we come down here to the 9th, and looks like Steve Cohen is going to be the odd man out here. D plus 23. So Republicans have to split that vote up into 3 districts, but they also can't endanger any of their current incumbents. So it's kind of a delicate balancing act. We see the same thing with Dems in blue states. Once their blue cities have enough population, they also want to crack it, but just keep enough of the vote on their side to drown out the surrounding Republican vote. So I've seen some people really get into the racial dynamics of this race about how it's a majority black district. Steve Cohen, he's not black. I don't think that's the actual motivation here. I think both sides want to take that partisan advantage. Sometimes that might affect different groups more than others. But if these Memphis voters were voting Republican, I don't think there's any chance Republicans would have split it up. And I do think if they were white Democrats, they would have done the exact same thing. But let's look at the demographics of this 9th district. So once you take a closer look at it, it's not exactly the prettiest shape. We've got some jagged edges here on the east part, vote. We've got median household income of 55,000, and it is 60% black, it's a quarter white, 9% Hispanic. And what happened in the last presidential election? Well, it voted for Harris 70 to 28. So if everything stands, Steve Cohen going to be on the chopping block. However, he already was facing a primary challenge from Justin Pearson. You might remember he was one of the Tennessee Three from a couple of years ago. So that would have been an interesting primary battle. The one poll here had it a dead heat between Cohen and Pearson. But none of that looks like it's going to matter at all unless this gets struck down in the courts, because Republicans very likely to win this seat now. So the last thing we'll do is take a closer look at the map on Dave's redistricting. So first, let's take a look at the overall partisan makeup of the new districts. Focus right here on the right. This is the presidential 2024 vote. So with the 3 districts that are going to break up Memphis, the 5th went 61% Republican, the 8th is 59, the 9th is also 60, the 7th district is also 60%, the 6th is over 62, the 4th is 61. How about the 3rd? That one's a little bit redder, it's 67, the 2nd is 66, and the 1st is 78. That's the reddest. So that looks pretty foolproof there for the GOP, even in a blue wave year. Now let's switch to the partisan view. So again, we've got some major cities. We've got Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville over here, and let's look at Memphis. Let's zoom in on this vote. So here we go. We can toggle this and we can see the blue vote, it's clearly been split up and cracked into the 3 surrounding districts. There's not much more to say other than that. It's pretty cut and dry what's happening here. It's just not enough population for more than one district, so it's pretty easy to split it up. Now let's also not forget about Nashville here. Let's zoom in on that. Take a look at this. That's also clearly split up and cracked. So this is ugly. It's clearly gerrymandering. This is what everybody's trying to do now. Usually the blue vote is more concentrated, so both sides are going to use it in their favor. They're either going to pack it all into one district, or they're going to crack it and try to have a 5, 10, or 15% advantage in 2 or 3 districts instead of either packing it all into one or having none. So that's what we see here in these medium-sized cities. I think both sides are completely guilty of the same thing, and this is the escalation we've seen now ever since Texas got started last year. But even before that, there were terrible maps out there, total imbalances in a bunch of states. So just waiting till the next census to have terrible maps, I don't think would really make this any better. Some people put all the weight on the racial aspect, but again, I think the partisan angle is the thing that could bring both sides together across almost every state. Dems are being drawn out in red states. Republicans have been drawn out in blue states. It's horrible. The maps look terrible. There's not even really debating on how fair they are anymore. At this point, it's just about how extremely unfair they are. I hope it leads to a solution, because I think everybody agrees that there's a problem. But once you get into the details on exactly how to fix it, that's where the entire process breaks down. Sooner or later, you're going to run up against, if you want to focus more on the partisanship or more on race, I think that's going to be the big divide. But that's it. Unless something changes, we're looking at a 9-0 map here in Tennessee. So let me know in the comments. How bad is this map compared to the other maps we've seen? You focus more on race or the partisanship when you're judging how unfair the map is? Do you think the Dems should have 2? Do you think they should have 3 districts here? What do you think is going to happen with this map? Do you think Steve Cohen would have won his primary? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.